Over 2.500 years ago, in the land that is now Nepal, there lived a prince named Siddhartha Gautama. Born into royalty and surrounded by luxury, he grew up sheltered from the suffering of the world. However, when he left the palace and witnessed old age, sickness, and death, he realized that everyone faces hardship. This deeply troubled him and he decided to renounce his throne, embarking on a quest to find a path to liberation for himself and all of humanity. For 6 years, he lived an ascetic life, trying various extreme practices, from fasting to enduring harsh conditions. But he did not achieve enlightenment. Realizing that extremes weren't the right way, he chose the middle way, avoiding both self-denial and indulgence. Finally, he sat in meditation under the Bodhi tree for 49 days and attained enlightenment. From then on, he was known as the Buddha Shakyamuni, the Enlightened One, Buddha. After gaining supreme wisdom, the Buddha dedicated the rest of his life to teaching the truth he had discovered. His teachings didn't rely on a creator or deities, but focused on understanding the nature of suffering and the path to liberation. Today, Buddhism is not just a religion, but also a philosophy of life, guiding people on how to live mindfully, compassionately, and wisely. The Buddha's teachings have spread throughout the world, deeply influencing millions of people on their journey to find peace and happiness. Many people think that when we mention the Buddha, we are only talking about one individual, the Buddha Shakyamuni. However, in Buddhism, Buddha is not a title reserved for just one person, but a term for anyone who has attained enlightenment and liberation from suffering. In Sanskrit, Buddha means awakened one, someone who has overcome ignorance and achieved perfect wisdom. Therefore, in addition to the Buddha Shakyamuni, Buddhism also mentions many other Buddhas, among which Amitabha Buddha is a familiar name. According to the scriptures, Amitabha Buddha was not a person who once lived on earth, but the leader of the Western Pure Land, a pure world where those who practice according to his path can be reborn after leaving this life. That's why many people often chant, Namo Amitabha Buddha, hoping to be guided to the Pure Land after death. This shows that Buddhism does not worship just one individual, but a path that leads people to enlightenment. Anyone can become a Buddha if they attain the wisdom, morality, and mindfulness of the Buddha Shakyamuni. Therefore, instead of just praying or worshipping, Buddhism encourages everyone to practice, to put the Buddha's teachings into practice, in order to find the path to liberation themselves. Understanding the true meaning of Buddha helps us see Buddhism not as a theistic religion, but as a journey of self-enlightenment, wisdom, and compassion. How is Buddhism different from other religions? One of the biggest differences between Buddhism and other religions is that Buddhism doesn't worship a creator or supreme deity. While many religions believe that the universe and people were created and are protected by a god, Buddhism focuses on wisdom, karma, and the enlightenment of each individual. The Buddha is not a god with the power to bestow blessings or punish, but an enlightened being who shows the way to help people free themselves from suffering. Therefore, in Buddhism, salvation doesn't come from faith in a deity, but from self-discipline of the mind and actions. Buddhists don't ask for miracles or protection from the Buddha, but strive to practice according to his teachings to achieve liberation. This is why Buddhism is considered more of a philosophical system than a religion in the traditional sense. However, many people still misunderstand Buddhism, thinking that going to temples, lighting incense, and praying can help them receive blessings or avoid disasters. In reality, Buddhism doesn't teach people to rely on external protection, but encourages each person to transform themselves, live virtuously, and let go of greed, anger, and delusion to achieve true peace. Therefore, compared to Christianity or Islam, where people place their faith in a supreme being, Buddhism is a path of self-reliance. No one can help us achieve enlightenment except ourselves. The Buddha is just the guide, but walking on that path is entirely up to us. The cause of suffering according to Buddhism. According to Buddhism, human life is inherently linked to suffering, not only physically but also mentally. We suffer because we can't get what we want, because we fear losing what we have, and because we can't avoid old age, sickness, and death. To help people understand and overcome suffering, the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, the four core truths of Buddhism. Dukkha, the truth of suffering, life always includes suffering. Samudaya, the truth of the origin of suffering, the cause of suffering is tanha, craving. That is, incessant desire. Nirodha, the truth of the cessation of suffering, suffering can cease if people eliminate craving. Magga, the truth of the path to the cessation of suffering, there is a path that helps people end suffering. Which is the Eightfold Path? According to the Buddha, the root cause of all suffering is greed, hatred, and delusion. People always want more, don't accept loss, and are often dominated by negative emotions such as anger, jealousy, and hatred. When we don't get what we want, we experience unhappiness. Even when we do, we still fear losing it. And ultimately, no one can escape the cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death. So how do we escape suffering? By letting go of attachment and clinging. This doesn't mean giving up everything or living ascetically, but learning to accept life. Understanding that everything is impermanent and nothing lasts forever. When our mind is no longer bound by desire, we will achieve true peace. Understanding the nature of suffering not only helps us live more calmly, but also helps us face challenges in life with mindfulness and wisdom. After realizing that suffering stems from craving, hatred, and delusion, the Buddha pointed out a path to help people end suffering and attain enlightenment. That is the Eightfold Path, 8 right paths leading to liberation. Right understanding, seeing life correctly, understanding the Four Noble Truths. Right thought, thinking correctly, not being dominated by greed or hatred. Right speech, speaking truthfully, not lying, not using harsh language, not causing division. Right action, acting correctly, not killing, not stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct. Right livelihood, earning a living honestly, not doing work that harms others. Right effort, always striving to practice, avoiding bad things and developing good things. Right mindfulness, living mindfully, not letting the mind be swept away by desires and negative emotions. Right concentration, meditating to achieve concentration and peace of mind. The Eightfold Path isn't a set of rigid rules, but a guide for each person to cultivate themselves. The Buddha doesn't force anyone to follow this path, but simply points out that if you want to escape suffering, this is the best way. The important thing in the Eightfold Path is balance. The Buddha once experimented with an extreme ascetic lifestyle, but realized that it didn't bring enlightenment. He taught that people shouldn't indulge in desires, but shouldn't torture themselves either, but find the middle way, a life of mindfulness and morality. When practicing the Eightfold Path, people gradually give up bad habits, live more purely, and achieve true happiness that doesn't depend on material possessions or fame. This is the path that helps each person self-enlighten and escape the cycle of birth and death. The Eightfold Path not only helps people escape suffering in this life but also affects karma and reincarnation, 2 important concepts in Buddhism. According to the law of karma, all our actions, karma, leave corresponding consequences. When we live according to the Eightfold Path, doing good deeds, speaking truthfully, thinking clearly, we will sow good seeds and reap good results in the future. Conversely, if we create bad karma, being greedy, hateful, harming others, we will reap bad consequences, maybe in this life or in future lives. This leads to the concept of reincarnation. That is, the continuous cycle of rebirth of a being. When a person has not yet attained enlightenment, they are still bound by karmic forces, leading to birth in different lives, possibly as humans, animals, or another form of existence, depending on the karma they have created. The ultimate goal of practicing the Eightfold Path is to end reincarnation, escape the cycle of birth and death, and attain nirvana, a state of complete liberation from suffering. This isn't a paradise but the complete extinguishing of greed, hatred, and delusion, helping people achieve eternal peace. So, if we want to have a good life not only in the present but also in the future, we need to live mindfully, do good, and avoid creating bad karma. We can't change the past, but we can control the present to build a better future. This is the core spirit of Buddhism, a journey of self-enlightenment. self-cultivation to escape suffering and achieve true happiness. Through the journey of understanding the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, karma, and reincarnation, we can see that Buddhist teachings are not only philosophical but also a practical guide for life. The Buddha doesn't teach people to pray or rely on a supreme being, but encourages each person to change themselves, live righteously and mindfully to escape suffering. In today's volatile world, these principles still hold value. When faced with stress, anxiety, or failure, we can remember that suffering is a natural part of life. But we don't have to be controlled by it. Instead of dwelling on ambition or regretting the past, we can practice mindfulness, cultivate peace of mind, and aim for more lasting values such as compassion, understanding, and wisdom. Buddhism doesn't require us to give up modern life or shun the world. On the contrary, it helps us live better, more balanced lives, know how to let go of unnecessary worries, and fully enjoy the present. When we understand and apply these teachings, we not only improve our personal lives but also contribute to a better society. Finally, enlightenment is not a distant destination, but a journey of daily cultivation. No matter who we are, or where we are, just by living mindfully, doing good, and letting go of attachments, we are one step closer to liberation from suffering. Start with the smallest things, a right thought, a kind word, a good deed, and let the values of Buddhism illuminate your path.